And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sportfolio Productions. This is Johnson Kanjithinkil, and today we have a very special conversation, for you guys. With us, we have Arunava Chaudhuri. I think if I had to put it very, in a summary, it would probably be he's one person who's seen pretty much every side of Indian football over the last 25 years, and it's an honor to basically have you on our channel talking about your experience about Indian football, through your lens, and just sort of recapping the different learnings along the journey. I think that will be very insightful, for the entire audience. So thank you, sir, for your time, and yeah, looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Johnson, for having me, and looking forward to hopefully a fun and a great conversation.
Brilliant. So just to sort of start right from the beginning, I think this is a very interesting question that I like to find out from whenever I speak to anybody. What's your earliest memory of football? Way before, it was a career, it was something that you wanted to do, for professionally. What was your earliest memories, and how was football for you growing up?
See, born and brought up here in Germany, football was a very normal thing as a kid, right? And the first sort of, I always say, person to play football with me was my mother, who used to play downstairs in the garden with me in her sari, sort of to be kickabouts, having an interest, and of course here in my hometown in Remscheid. The football club FC Remscheid used to do, or BVL Lüttringhausen was the name of the prior club, and then two clubs merged and FC Remscheid formed. They used to be around the third and the fourth year, or spend a few years, even five in total, in the second Bundesliga. So football was something which was of a topic here, and you grow up with it, and every summer holiday we spent in India. Initially, we used to stay with our grandmother, and then with my uncle. And there, for whatever reason, I, as a younger kid, because I was coming from Germany, I was allowed to kick about with the kids in the locality, in the park in Kolkata. Yeah, as I was often 4, 5, 6 years younger than the others. I don't know why, but again, I still was allowed to play because I was coming from Germany, and Germany were world champions, or world Germany were this, or Germany were that. And that was for me sort of, if you ask me, my mother is the person who allowed me to come into football, and my first instances of 6, 7 year old, most probably playing football with other kids in Kolkata. That would be sort of my first sort of experiences with Indian football.
That's amazing to hear. And just, I mean, your first introduction to Kolkata football, or your first experience of that microcosm of a football culture in itself, like, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I moved as a 10-year-old to Kolkata. I went to Calcutta International School, and one of my questions to the family was, "What about football over here?" Right? Football was a big thing in our school, even though our school was a multi-sports entity. Of course, football was played in the monsoons. In the winters, you were playing basketball, volleyball, cricket, hockey, other sports as well. But football was the main topic. One of my best friends still today, he was born and brought up in and around Frankfurt, so also a football buff. We had guys, someone who was born in Liverpool, someone born in Paris. So, we had a lot of kids in our school who had this knack of football. Embassy kids, someone from Poland, someone from the Czech Republic, someone from the Portuguese or consulate. So therefore, there was a mix of people who are interested to play football, and we love to play football, and that was it. And then I realized, I learned from family that we, as a family, coming through, born and brought up into this football culture in Kolkata, that the family supported East Bengal. So yeah, even at that young age, as a 10-year-old, first match on the Kolkata Maidans, watching Kolkata league football, East Bengal. Don't ask me against who it was. I still think and believe it was George Telegraph, but I might be wrong. In 1987 was my first game, and there my interest on about Indian football came about. And 1992, I saw the first India game. It was against Iran in a qualifier, and yeah, that was me sort of before I returned to Germany, having an interest in Indian football.
That's amazing, because that perfectly segues into my next question, because this was something very fascinating, not like, something that I found out recently, but when I first read about it, was that how a programming project actually led to sort of Indian football's first online destination for just not just news, but everything, every update around the ecosystem. Could you tell us a little bit about indianfootball.com and how did that come about?
So it was not a project. It was per se that actually in 1997 I was studying, and there was a university strike, and I got to know a few people. I got to know about HTML programming and other things. Actually, no, I have to start a year earlier, 1996, when I joined university. We were given an email address, and none of us had a clue what an email address was, right? Again, to try and explain to you and put into context of what it was sort of in the mid 90s, right? We didn't have a clue what an email address was. They said you had to register. The only computers which were available in the university were either in the library or with one of the students' unions.
Mhm.
Those were the only access points in that university to get into the net. Okay. Then we have a student strike. I got involved in it, and for whatever reasons, I got interest. I've always had an interest in writing, so I got involved in the so-called media team, backup team, and trying to, create releases, write stuff, and other things, which goes back also to my Kolkata days, because even in an international school, in the yearbook, I used to write things for the yearbook. And in 1991, for example, I wrote an extensive, and those days, very weird, four-page piece on the state of the global politics with Iraq, the war and all happening. We had a lot of kids who joined us at international school because of the Iraq war. So that interest is always there. And then in 97, I got to know, we had someone programmed a website for the student protest. And then I learned it from the young lady. And I created a website about myself. Done, right?
Mhm.
I rehashed the website, I think 3 4 times, and then there was this again, which would today we would say a Facebook page, but it was actually de facto website, which was under the server of the university, under my university accred.
Yes.
Then I created sub pages on Kolkata, on Remschied, on this and that, and then I in early 97 I started following the newspapers. So it was the Times of India, the Indian Express, the Telegraph, the Hindu. So there were four papers which had a website, and I
Mhm.
was following Indian sports through it. There used to be a website at the time. There was this gentleman called R. Jaya Krishnan. I think he was a professor, or he was something attached to a university in California. And he used to do what today you would call an updated blog, who was actually literally on that website every day posting, what was happening in regard to tennis.
Mhm.
I realized I was following stuff on Indian football, and there was nothing on Indian football per se available. There was nothing. There was no source at all on the net. And this led me at some stage to think, why don't we start a website? Why don't we? I'm saying, why don't I start a website on Indian football, which was the unofficial Indian football site. I called it that,
Yeah.
which then a few months later turned into indianfootball.com. And yeah, and that, there was no idea, there was no big. And on the second day, there was a professor called Paul Demio, who was doing research on Indian football. He was attached to a university in Glasgow and then in Nottinghamshire. And he sent me a message, hey, great, great, do this, create this website, all the best. And then other people started to write as well, a lot of congratulatory messages. I don't know how the people found the website. I don't know if the website those days, because there weren't that many, that it got tracked immediately and it was available in the respective search engines. There was no Google, there was no Facebook, there was no social media of any sorts. Forget WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it all started. And then a few months later, my very good friend Chris Ponakato Daniel sent me an email asking, where can I buy an India jersey? And I looked at the mail ID, it was GMX. GMX is a German platform. And I just asked him, I said, hey, I see that you've got a GMX mail ID. Where are you based? And he says, I'm based in Versmold, which is 140 kilometers away from me, also here in the west of Germany.
Mhm.
And Chris, a school student at the time, interested in graphic designing and other thing, for whatever reason, said, "Hey, if you need any help with the website, I can help you." And I'm still today, I'm very bad at graphic designing. I do my stuff around the blog and around my YouTube channel with thumbnails and other things, but I'm bad at it. So Chris came along, and there was another person who was actually literally halfway, approximately halfway between Chris and me, a guy called Daniel Ponatu, who joined us as well. And suddenly, three guys based in the west of Germany were in their free time, in their spare time, running a website called IndianFootball.com. Yeah, for India.
That's a really interesting story. Just to imagine, like, sort of how you went about it. It was something that you wanted to teach yourself, or rather, it was a challenge for yourself, and it actually turned out to plug a gap in sort of the communication space, especially around Indian football at that time. I think communications is probably the foundation of the next question that I wanted to, like, touch upon. Is as a journalism major myself, I think my parents like always question, like, okay, if you want to write in sports, like, it's not going to be an easy life. It's going to be something that you're going to have to, like, really struggle for a while till you make it. uh, was that ever a dilemma in your head when you were starting out, like, that journalism or other communications in sports is a little bit of a risk at that point in time, considering the options that you had? Or was it a no-brainer that this is what I want to do as a career, as a profession?
I have to tell you that I've never applied for a job in my life, right? So things have been so that things somehow or the other have landed in my lap, right? And when I, if I look at my studies, I mean, I was initially studying chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
My aim was to either win the Nobel Prize in chemistry or to fly into space, because I wanted to be a pilot. And again, I'm not wearing my spectacles, but I actually also wear specs like you. Um, I wasn't allowed to also become a pilot. So my first aim to get into space was actually, hey, listen, let me become a pilot, and then via pilot become eligible for the for the ESA, for the European Space Agency programs. And then again, one has big dreams. That didn't turn out. I had medical issues, allergic reactions and stuff, and I was no longer allowed in the lab. And what was my plan? I didn't have a plan B. But I was doing already IndianFootball.com for the fun of it on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And a very good friend of mine said, "You have always loved writing. You're doing something on football in India. And why don't you study journalism?" I said, "Okay, good idea." I looked at sports journalism. In Germany, if you want to study sports journalism, you actually have to be an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So the qualification criteria at the Deutsche Sporthochschule Köln for me were not, you know, uh, forget it. No chance at all, right? The level is nearly Olympic athlete level,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get into that program. And I had problems with my meniscus and knee, and that's why I never really got on to be a better footballer. Also in honesty. And so then I looked at possible courses. I looked at media design, media production, which was available as a course in Düsseldorf in combination with the English language as a master's program. And I got into that. And yeah, it was I would say the right choice. And when it came about to having to do practical internships, I had spoken to a couple of friends who were working at the Deutsche Welle in Bonn, which is the German foreign
Yeah.
service of radio and television. At the time, actually more only a radio platform, or not an only, but it was radio and television. And someone in the Bengali department, a very good friend of mine, a good dada of mine, said, "Hey, Onavo, why don't you do an internship with us?" And this was in the summer 2005, where the Confederations Cup was on.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Okay, why not?" And the funny one is, I got from FIFA and Accred for IndianFootball.com, not only but Chris as well. We both got accredited by FIFA for
Wow.
the Confederations Cup 2005. So we went to the launch event, which was on top of Cologne, which is the highest building in Cologne, 32 stories. And my first ever Deutsche Welle interview that I did was with the late Franz Beckenbauer, right? I went back on that Saturday because in those days, we had to do DUT tapes and all that stuff, recorded, had to take it back. Again, totally different world, totally different time. And I then said jokingly, I said, guys, I think I should retire. I mean, I've just interviewed Franz Beckenbauer, and I joked, and there was this senior guy from the West German radio, WDR 2, Manny Breukmann, legend. I met him a few weeks ago, and I was joking with him. I said, hey, Manny, you will not remember, but 20 years ago, Franz Beckenbauer gave me an interview before he gave you an interview. And he actually jokingly remembered. He said, yeah, I remember this small little guy. Huh? I remember. I was angry. Why does this old man give him an interview, not me first? And you were Deutsche Welle. I'm bloody WDR 2, And he was known. He's one of the voices of German football on radio. So
Mhm.
he's done the live, every Saturday. So yeah, it was by chance. It was fun, and it was those kind of these by chances that happened, and yeah, and therefore I've been very lucky with these things.
That's fascinating to hear. I think it is something that I never knew, and I mean, as it turned out, really grateful that Indian football was where you ended up pursuing your.
But I have to add a story to it that I had met Franz Beckenbauer with Chris at the draw for the qualifiers for the 2006 World Cup. So
Mhm.
we had gone. It was in Frankfurt in the ball big hall in Frankfurt, and Franz Beckenbauer at the time used to go. That guy is just a legend, and his skills of interacting with people is brilliant. So he
Mhm.
came to Chris and me. I remember said, "Oh, you guys look like you are from India," and we then spoke in German. We spoke for 10, 12 minutes or even more, most probably with him, blah, this, that, everything. And of course, I used that when I approached him with my Deutsche Welle mic. I said,
Mhm.
you'd spoken to me, this, that, everything. Yeah, yeah, ich wusste, whatever he said. And the Kaiser then. And so it was quite funny that even though I was there for the Deutsche Welle, my Indian football was the start and entry point of a conversation and even of my accred of being able to cover it because the South Asian department for which I was part of their sort of coverage that I actually normally wouldn't have gotten an accred as such for the tournament.
And I mean, I just recalling the 2006 World Cup was a massive cultural event around Germany, right? I mean, a lot of stadiums that are very iconic today were sort of really brought back to life, in terms of revamping them and reconstructing a lot of them. So sort of being a part of, I think, a massive national level cultural event that for a global tournament, the biggest one in sport, and an Indian football sort of link to get you in there is a very interesting story. And I think that's pretty much my next question, which is the early 2000s was a very interesting time for Indian football. There were a lot of things happening. Bhaichung just returning from Berry, uh, India playing in England for an exposure trip, and following that, some pretty impressive qualifying results when you put it in comparison to everything that's transpired since. What are your earliest recollections of that time? What was your experience of being behind the scenes during this very eventful, to put it in a very interesting way, this eventful period of Indian football?
Just to finish off with 2006, before coming to Indian football, for me, 2006, the month of the World Cup will remain the best month of my life. I was every day somewhere else. Every 4 or 5 days, I was sleeping in my own bed. I got to know Germany in a different way. Was there for some iconic matches. Germany beating Poland, Dortmund in extra time. Oliver Neville with the goal. Germany, Argentina penalty shootout. That paper slip of Jens Lehmann. The World Cup final where we didn't know that Zidane had actually headbutted Materazzi, who I would meet later on and actually have my own verbal spat in the ISL. So it was crazy, and I very often I was the guide to the Indian media contingent which was there. Shamsundar Ghosh at the time, senior journalist Shamda, with the Statesman, Dhiman Sarkar with the Hindustan Times, who still writes today, others as well. So it was a very special month. And going back to the late 90s, early 2000s, was that again? much younger than I am today. Today, I'm most probably very realistic and also know a lot of things, and therefore I'm skeptical in a lot of things before I start jumping up and down.
Mhm.
In those days, we were naive. I mean, Chris and I actually, after the World Cup draw, created a section on IndianFootball.com called India's Passage to Germany, 2006. Right? We thought because in 2001 India beat the UAE 1-0 at home. UAE ranked 64th.
Mhm.
India ranked 124 at the time. Incredible. Again, a sellout Kanti with over 30,000 people. That is a crowd that BFC have never, ever had at that ground. With all the success that Bangalore FC have had, with all that has been done in that stadium. But that crowd, there were people literally sitting on the roof that day
Mhm.
to watch that game. India won. We were 1 point away from the final round of the Asian qualifiers, which were much more compact, much less teams getting to a World Cup. There was hope, there was hype. Bhaichung going to England. We played in 2000, 2001, 2002 in England. I mean, yeah, we played against Fulham, lost 2-0 in a match. Karl-Heinz Riedle, one of the players for Germany in the 1990 World Cup, scoring both the goals and all these things. There was a belief that Indian football could go somewhere, right? Everything that is going wrong at the moment,
Mhm.
you would have thought 25, 23 years ago, it looked totally different. I met Stephen Considine in 2001 in London, and Stephen wanted to become India coach. He was at the time with Nepal and all that stuff. A lot of things happened at the time where you thought we are going upwards, we're going in the right direction. And we were part of that journey. And it was compared to today, everything, every piece of information is easily available today.
Mhm.
If you look at IndianFootball.com, I have to thank people like a Novi Kapadia, Dhiman Sarkar in Cal, Amitabh Dasarma in Kolkata, Sunil Warrior in Mumbai, Rajiv Kolasari in Bangalore, these kind of journalists who would send us information. Vijay Bali at the
Mhm.
time with JCT, then Punjab FA secretary, those guys used to send us results.
Mhm.
And sometimes you would get the results the next day. It is not in an instance. I always laugh when Indian football fans today always say, oh, every match should be live, right? I know days where we waited. It could be even a Kolkata derby.
Mhm.
There was no WhatsApp. And sending an SMS was too costly from India to it. Would cost 10, 12, 15 rupees to send. So a lot happened in those days, and we were very lucky to be part of it. I especially physically part of it on all three England tours. I helped. India didn't have a media officer or other things. I coordinated media work. I did commentary on those games. Became very, very good friends with these things. I always say I'm good friends with all of those guys. Especially Renedy is like a brother to me, and these friendships will stay for life.
And that was my introduction to Indian football. That period, like of India playing in Europe, in England, Bhaichung playing in England, and following, and then followed with the basically the World Cup qualification results. What really fascinated me at that time as a child was that we weren't trying to play pretty football. We were disciplined and we wanted results. And I think that Kantirwa game was the finest example of that. UAE, much superior team, kept the ball much better, but we just made the most of the half chance, or rather the chance that we could create. If I think just for the younger audience, if you could just describe some members or players from that team the players from that team and their performances during the time that you witnessed physically that stayed with you, especially because this was the first time you said you were physically present throughout all of those iconic moments during the early 2000s.
See, for me, what I've seen over the last now 3 decades, I'm Vision, the technical ability that Viju Bhai had. To me, Viju Bhai was or is the best technical Indian footballer that I've seen. And if he was an Argentinian or a Brazilian, he might have been a world star. He was exceptional on the ball. The fighter, the warrior, is Bhaichung Bhutia. Bhai is, of course, there's a level of skill, but that determination that Bhaichung had was next level. There, a Renedy, again, as a friend, the technical ability also he had, but also um, he was the gelling factor in the team. We all, in those days, we speak about Bhaichung, 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 Bhaichung. Yes, he was the captain. But Renu, as vice captain, sometimes I felt was as important, if not more important. But because Bhaichung, by some of the younger ones, was always seen already as a legend. They
Mhm.
didn't, can I approach him? And very often, someone featured in your um, traveler's guide to Indian football, Sukhwinder Singh.
Mhm.
Suki Paji was also, with all due respect, Suki isn't the best of coaches, right? But Suki is the best man manager I've ever seen. You could today, Suki, you could throw into Real Madrid and maybe he would manage it better than a Xabi Alonso because he knows how to handle. I've seen that, especially with I am Vijay and Joe Polancheri. Again, Joe Polancheri, from his physicality, should have been an Indian player to go abroad. But again, always with his numerous injuries and other things. So this team was special. Jules Alberto, who scored the goal against the UAE, now based in the UK with his family, trying to do stuff in coaching over there as well. And to me, if I look at uh, um, defense, Deepak Mondal, Mahesh Goli, Virender Singh initially in goal. Um, you know, Sur Kumar as a defender. Yeah, Samir Naik. It was a very very special team. Even Khalid to be named, Jules Alberto, Hardeep Singh Sangha. All these guys. Yeah, it was a very very special team.
I think just you mentioned Suki sir. When we had a chance to speak to him, and he had a lot to tell us about, especially that part of his career. We asked him about Bhaichung, about Vijay, and he spoke about them as you'd expect. But he was the most excited to talk about Renedy Singh. He was so excited and he was so passionate to talk about Renedy by. And I think the last time I spoke to him, also I told him that this is the. I mean, we've made this. This is the video, and he said I love what you did for Baichung. I can't wait for when you film with Renedy. Renedy is like my son, and I would love to see his story this way. And I think that was one thing that I took back from that interview, because he was so passionate about the way he spoke about Renedy, picking him when he was really young, and not the most popular selection, in Suki sir's words, when he was picked for the national team. But his career just went on to prove all the doubts and all the questions wrong. The other person he mentioned was Khalid Jamil, and he told me this very fond story. I think you will have a lot more to add to it too. um, I think after during the World Cup qualifiers, I think after the UAE game, or was it the UAE game? I'm not sure. Basically, Suki sir spoke about him having a chat with Joe Paul Ancheri and Khalid Jamil, and he was talking to them about playing a superior team, hold your shape, stick to basically the responsibilities that you have, don't venture out of position. एंड देन ही सेज कि मैं ये कहने के बाद जो पॉल तो चला गया, फिर मैंने खालिद को पकड़ के रोका कि और बोला कि देखो बेटा, वो तो नहीं सुनने वाला, ही इज गोइंग टू बी ऑल एक्शन, ही इज गोइंग टू फॉलो द बॉल लाइक अ मैग्नेट wherever it goes, you're going to have to sit here and play today. And then Sukisa says, and he did. And that's why, he said, and that's why we were that difficult to beat during that time, because there was basically shared responsibility that if one person is trying to do something, I'll cover for the other. So it wasn't, like you mentioned, I think wasn't the. I think he also talks about it not being the tactically the most brilliant team, but there was a shared responsibility among everyone that we're not going to be an easy team to walk over. We're not going to be easy to lose.
But that's the whole point. I think that if you ask Suki Panjay, if you ask Stephen Constantine, if you ask Bob Houghton, all of them will tell you a simple formation and clear cut tasks to the players is the best thing you can do, right? A
Yeah.
lot of coaches overboard the players. Forget the Indian levels, right? Even at international, Xabi Alonso has failed because he was overboarding the players at Real Madrid,
Yeah.
right? Keep it simple. And the point was, Jopal and Cherry was, yes, your holding midfield. You would call them today a holding midfielder. Those days you didn't have that term.
Hmm.
But Jopal was also your number 8 or even your number 10. So Jopal's role was different. Khalid was the one who was sitting back and sort of your quarterback to try and ensure that. But I can go back a year earlier. when we were in England in 2000. India had lost 2-0 to Fulham, and Khalid Jamil came on at halftime for Basudev Mondal. So Suki thought, okay, listen, let me take off a creative midfielder and bring in a physical, a taller, a stronger, a big bodied guy and try and block, because Fulham's midfield was controlled by John Collins,
Hmm.
who at the time was Scotland captain,
Yeah.
right? And after the game, we were in the boardroom of Fulham, and there was a little interaction going on between Noel Dalima, who was commentator with, yeah, was one of the commentators, comes in, shouts, Suki, I'm not going to use the words that he used, but he then said, why did you not start with Khalid Jamil? You needed that physicality. And from that match onwards on that tour, Khalid was a starting 11 player, because Suki had to realize, again, even for Sukhwinder Singh in the year 2000, as the first Indian coach since 1948 to bring a team, Indian football team, to England and to play on English soil, is a different thing than if you're used to playing South Asian nations mainly, right? So that understanding had to be there. And with his 4-4-2 system, simple shape, no big, you know, uh, it was focused, and it got him again. He's been the most successful. If you want to just go by results, he's been the most successful coach of the Indian national team over the last 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's perfectly set up for the next part of like Indian football, which I'm very interested to hear more about, which is basically the late 2000s and the early 2010s. Because I felt like at that time, as just a fan, Indian football and German football seem to have a very close bond from the outside looking in. Bayern Munich legends played a game. Um, After that, Mohan Bagan played against Bayern, and obviously then Bhaichung playing his farewell against Bayern Munich itself. It's only years later that I found out that, I mean, there was one common thread throughout this like all of these events, and very like looking forward to basically hearing your version of basically that part of Indian football, or that phase of Indian football where there were a lot of activations, to put it in a very marketing term, like for regarding sporting events. What was that like as a professional, being a part of all of these incidents that were happening?
See, I think 2005 is a very important year, because Z came in as a group. Z Sports started to rebrand the I League, sorry, the NFL and the Federation Cup. The something of the time was suddenly you had the zebras, cheerleaders, and other things in there. So they wanted to make it flashy.
Hmm.
The Bayern Munich B team was supposed to take part in the IFA Shield in December 2005.
Hmm.
And before that, my transition from sports media and journalism to a little bit more management came in 2004, when Chris and I actually did a 75-page report for the Bundesliga on Indian football and on India, with our recommendations. And in 2005, a good friend of mine, and who had helped us also, again in 2002, we actually started the first campaign to find PIOs. So we actually, I did a camp for the Indian under 17 team with Chris here in Germany. With the help of the DFB of the German Federation, we did a camp as preparations for the under 17 Asian Cup. And this came about because a few months earlier, I was sitting in Kolkata with the then coach Islam Akhmedov, and he said, "Listen, um, my boys need exposure. The AFF won't be able to do it. If you can help, why not?" And that's when I approached the DFB, and we worked out things. They ended up in Germany. We played, amongst others, FC Cologne under 16s. A certain Lukas Podolski scored 2 goals against us in a 3-3 draw. Shuru Topal picked up a red card. A lot of things happened. But so therefore, I was, besides all the media stuff, I was trying to help Indian football in my little capacities, which I could. I was spending time as a student. I was spending, forget the time, but also my little money that I was earning on the side on Indian football, whatever I could. As I said, 2004, the DFL came to us. We did some stuff for the Bundesliga, Southampton Football Club. I did something at the time. And then in 2005, Bayern Munich approached me and said, "Listen, we're thinking about India. Your name was recommended to us by a friend." And the gentleman, Martin Hegler, was handling international affairs at Bayern. One of his best friends was an Indian, a Bengali origin gentleman who was himself a referee, a football referee in the region. His son is still a referee. now. And his name was Abdul Sattar. And Sattar then made the introduction, and I joined Bayern, and I became part of the team, of the B team, to travel to Kolkata. Again, Kolkata for me, back of my hands, because 2004 I'd organized, was part of the team to organize the India versus Japan World Cup qualifier. I was sort of heading the media part, especially the international media, which was quite interesting because the Japanese came around with
Mhm.
the technical gadgets which I hadn't seen in Europe, and which were surely not known or available in India or Kolkata.
Mhm.
So therefore, for me, um, I, for example, had first time ever installed Wi-Fi. Uh,
Sorry.
bless you. At a sporting venue. Forget even cricket. I mean, I had to go to Delhi. This, that, everything. So therefore, I knew. I was learning while I was still studying, and
Mhm.
then Bayern Munich came about, and so therefore, yeah. And then 2008, Bayern Munich went to Kolkata to play Mohun Bagan, Oliver Kahn's final game on a three-venue tour. China leg got cancelled because there was a huge earthquake in China earlier this year, so they canceled the game. So Jakarta and Kolkata, 125,000 people in the stadium. Insane thing to see. And if you if you if you think 2009, the B team returned once again, played in Kolkata, played in Siliguri, beat East Bengal 5-1. A certain Renedy Singh scored the one goal for East Bengal. That's also a common thread. And a certain Thomas Müller played against East Bengal.
Wow.
And then 2010, the legends come, and yeah, that is most probably, besides the best month of my life. 2006 was the best day of my life when. Around lunchtime, I jokingly said on the table, you know what? You're playing the East Bengal Legends tonight. 2 minutes for me to play for Bayern. Brilliant, lovely that would be. And the coach or the guy in charge of the Legends, Wolfgang Dremmler himself, someone who played for Germany and for Bayern, said, "Hey, Arunava, do you mean that seriously?" I said, "Yeah, 2 minutes. I mean, I can't run more than 2 minutes anyway, but 2 minutes would be more than enough." And that team had 6 World Cup winners, right, in the squad. So then I'm invited to the team meeting at 3 o'clock. The matches was, I think, at 7, if I'm not wrong. And they then suddenly he starts, we have a new teammate, guys, blah, blah, this, and I'm looking for. I'm thinking, who is this new teammate? I mean, I know everyone. Like this and then suddenly points at me and like, okay, okay, it's okay, this is me. And there was someone from Adidas who was with us. He was also, because there were 2 injuries. So actually the squad was short of players playing in Kolkata. So then, okay. And at halftime, I'm told to warm up. And I'm like, why am I going to warm up for 45 minutes to play 2 minutes? I said, no, no, you most probably play more. And already I was tense because when I came to the stadium, I'm running around like a footballer. I'm not running around as if I'm handling something, managing something, right? It was, and I've done multiple matches at that venue. Um, I speak to friends of mine, and they look, why are you wearing? I said, I'm going to play today. And people thought, yeah, of course you're going to play. Yeah. Just let him talk. Then they see my name on the team sheet and all that stuff. So suddenly, some of the Bengali media guys said, you are playing today? I said, yeah, I'm playing today. Right? I am actually going to play today. So this was, and we, at that time, Lufthansa had 3 flights to Kolkata a week. So the crew which flew us to Kolkata also flew us back. So the pilots, the whole crew was sitting actually in on a bench behind, and I had to warm up with fun stewardesses, and they were like, "Oh God, this is getting bad, really." Then he says, after 70 minutes, get ready, you're coming on. And like, there's 20 minutes on the clock. I'm not coming on. And, I actually came on the 73rd minute, right? And I came on for Paul Breitner, right? At that time, the only guy to have scored in 2 World Cup finals, right? I mean, and there are still 5 world champions on the field. So yeah, I played for 17 minutes. Sadly, I actually should have scored a goal. I didn't because Shubhapal's father-in-law, who later on became my goalkeeping coach at Mumbai City, actually did a brilliant save against me. So yeah, there are a lot of cross connections in this, and this for me stays the best day in my life because I can say I am a Bayern Munich player, right? I am listed as a player at Bayern Munich. I'm most probably the worst ever Bayern Munich player, but I'm a Bayern Munich player. And secondly, I was on the pitch with five world champions. And even big players on this planet, most probably very rarely would have played with five world champions on the field. So nobody can take this away from me. So I can brag with that. I've bragged as a fan of Renedy and the others. Yeah, anyway, that doesn't matter. So for me, that was one of those, you can't buy this. I became part of the Bayern Munich family. They accepted me, they took me on, and I'm always grateful to the club, which I've also been a fan of since I was a small child.
That's fascinating, yeah, and I mean that's so heartwarming to hear. Just like the club that you followed as a child, and sort of even getting an opportunity to wear the jersey and represent them. It's a
And
dream.
play in Kolkata,
Yeah,
city where my parents were born, against East Bengal, which a
yeah,
club which we supported. So this is, it was an own Arunava Chaudhuri story, so to say, in that game for me.
exactly. I think like all the sort of connections come together. That's amazing to hear, and I think that's just I think perfect because a couple of years later, you're also at the heart of one of the most sort of memorable games for kids of my generation who followed Indian football. Not the game for the game itself, but for what it actually meant. And could you just tell us a little bit about behind the scenes of Bhaichung's farewell? How was that story?
So the Baichung farewell match story was that it was a Wednesday. I was with my cameraman and producer here at local television. We had done some piece and we were recording some voiceovers. And I get a call from Bayern Munich saying, "Do you think in January we could play in India?" I said, "January, yeah, sure. It's not too hot. Always possible. We're thinking of Delhi." I'm like, oh, Delhi, why? Maybe another football center. I said, no, we are trying to, we were offer from Audi, the Auto Expo, at the time, the biggest auto fair or automobile fair in India, is set to happen. Audi wants certain of our players to be at the fair, and we could play in Delhi against an Indian club or whatever you propose. And I said, Delhi in 2012 was a dead zone for club football. I said, yeah, maybe the national team. Okay. This was a Wednesday afternoon. Then Martin Hegler, who was still there, says, you know what, let me speak to the Audi guys. I'll call you back. And then we're having a conversation, and he's having a conversation with Audi, and then he puts me into the conference call. And Clemens Olmert, who was head of marketing Audi India at the time, Clemens then explains his idea, and I say, listen, yeah, we could do that. Play against the national team, and I have an idea on top of it. Indian legend Bhaichung Bhutia sort of has ended his career, but there was never a farewell game for Bhaichung. And we've never had a farewell game for anyone ever, from an Indian perspective, right? Because this idea of a testimonial never existed in Indian football, or has ever actually been implemented as well after that. They loved it. And we spoke, I think, for an hour, and my production guys are over there, and there's saying like, you know what, we need to finish off, right? We we have to we have a show to finish. And then Clemens and said, guys, if I can work it out, you want to meet on Friday in India? Yeah, why not? Right? I mean, Martin says, let me check with Lufthansa. Lufthansa at the time was Bayern Munich sponsor. He said, let me see. And from the first call to deciding to fly to India was about 3 hours. Right? This is how Germans work, so to say. I got in touch with Kushal Das. Kushal said, yeah. I said, listen, this match, no cost to you. You just provide the team. Listen, if we're smart, Audi will even take care of the costs of the Indian national team. And of course, they were happy, saying, hey, if it's no cost to us, no problem. And we said, okay, chalo. And Friday, we get to Delhi, meet the AFF. And AFF and Baichung were, not best of friends at the time. Let's put it this way. And I said, okay, I will convince Bhutia to play. let me sort it out. I sorted out between the AFF and Reliance because Reliance IMGR
Hmm.
were stakeholders of all rights of Indian football. And I said, I said to Bhaichung, they'll gift you a car. I just said it. Yeah, yeah, sure, sure, sure. Done, right? I don't even know if Bhaichung remembers all of this, right? So we had a very, but he says, I don't want to play for the AF. And again, there were issues. But again, all of that sorted. Then we went to the Nehru Stadium, the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium. This was 1 year after the Commonwealth Games.
Hmm.
In and around the stadium, everything is branded as Commonwealth Games. The trash of the Commonwealth Games closing ceremony were still in the periphery of the stadium. The grass was up to the knees. There were holes in the ground. Again, the situation that some of the ISL teams are facing at this moment in time, and you want them to hold the league
Hmm.
in 4 weeks. I then said to the other guys, I said, if you are willing to enable budgets, you can get this ground ready in 3 to 4 weeks. That is, in Indian standards, it can be done because the winter's coming, this, and that, everything. It can be done. The AFF then said, you know what? If you're going to get the ground ready, why don't we play the SAF championship in Delhi in December? Which put added pressure that the ground had to be made ready. And the ground was ready. Again, there was, during SAF, there were still some problems. There were some holes, which filling up this, that, everything with ground, mud, grass, whatever. So all of these things were done. And then the match happened. Um, a very, very cold evening in Delhi. I remember I caught a cold. From Delhi, I flew the next day to Kolkata. My parents were there. I flew to Kolkata. I spent, I think, 10 days in bed in Kolkata. I didn't go out, didn't watch anything, couldn't do anything. And yeah, it was a memorable occasion. India lost 4-0. Uh, Amongst others, Bastian Schweinsteiger scored a goal. Bastian Schweinsteiger did his basketball move, alley-oop, at the time. Um, and yeah, it was memorable. I enabled some of my friends to click pictures with the Bayern stars and at the Oberoi where we were staying. So it was a very, very memorable experience for all of us.
And I think that that German connection also sort of had another uh, little adventure like for Indian football that you enabled with Nirmal Chetri and Fortuna Düsseldorf. And I think the reason why I wanted to ask you about that is because that wasn't the first time or the last time that you helped Indian footballers pursue opportunities abroad. And this, I felt like when I was researching, was a very fascinating part of your professional journey because it began in media and communications, but like it spread across sponsorship, across operations, logistics, across aiding recruitment. I just wanted to sort of get you to tell us a little bit more about Indian players moving abroad, the challenges that were that players faced decades ago, and how is it right now, and just with instances that you were central part to.
See, I can have to say that for an Indian footballer to go abroad is always very difficult. Bhaichung could move abroad because there was a gentleman called Raj Purohit who enabled him the opportunity to trial with number of clubs, and then Neil Warnock signed him for Bury Football Club,
Mhm.
right? So it's not only about the trial, it's also that a coach was willing to take you on. Neil Warnock wanted Bhaichung Bhutia, not because he's an Indian footballer, he wanted the footballer Bhaichung Bhutia. The problem for Bhaichung was Neil Warnock left a few weeks later and joined Sheffield United. And again, I don't know how many times he joined Sheffield United after that, but Neil Warnock himself has been and is a legend of football coaching in the UK. So Neil, I happened to be there when the conversations were happening at QPR. Even I told Amit Bhatia a little bit about Sunil, this, that, everything. Gianni Palladino turned up at La Masia. India was training in 2009 over there. Sunil sadly didn't get a work permit. Again, my friends, Yogesh Joshi got him to the US. Nuno got him to Portugal. Again, all opportunities because of personal relationships, not because of the footballer, the quality, whatever, which normally is the reason for a transfer. In 2013, um, I did certain introductions that before the ISL could start, that the ISL signed Indian footballers for the player pool.
Mhm.
And I then had the idea because the ISL was pushed from 23 to 2013 to 2014. So it was supposed to happen in the start of 2013 season, which was
Mhm.
summer. Then it was pushed to 2014 beginning, and then it was pushed to the latter window of 2014 post the World Cup. And I was always talking to clubs and opportunities, and Fortuna Düsseldorf then said, guys, through a friend of mine who is an agent, said, you know what, let's give players a chance. Let's see if, what's the quality of Indian footballers. The honest answer has to be that there were certain players that I approached.
Mhm.
Some weren't interested. Some were scared to try it. I remember with Nirmal, I've always had a good relationship. Again, Renedy Singh introduction, and Nirmal said, "Huh, Dada, I'll try. I'll come." And then the question was who could be the second one. There were certain other players that I was thinking about, and then in 2012, I had visits from Godwin Franco and Renedy over here.
Mhm.
And Godwin had always said, if I ever get a chance, I would love to trial in Europe. And he was playing with Dempo at the time, right? So he was, that Armando Colasso team and all that stuff. So he was one of the better ones on the verge of the national team. So
Mhm.
those two came over, did quite decent, especially Nirmal did well, but they said, okay, we can't really give you an opportunity in the second. They were Fortuna Düsseldorf, like now, were in the second Bundesliga. We can give you a chance in our B team, which is fourth tier.
Mhm.
But as are the rules in Germany at the time or even now, fourth tier, you're not going to get a work permit. So
Mhm.
therefore, Nirmal, sadly, even though they liked him, they couldn't take him on board. And I've tried afterwards also with other players. The other big one was, of course, Lalinswala Changte in 2019 with Vikin Stavanger with my friend Chris Roy in Norway. Um, could have happened, should have happened, but sadly didn't. And yeah, those are realities of the things.
I think one particular player and one such story I want to just touch upon is Renedy Singh and CSK. You've just mentioned before that like Renedy's like close personal friend. I think as a fan, he's always somebody I was very fascinated watching play because I was a winger myself, and his technical ability and dead ball specialty was very unique for us as Indian football fans to watch. Um, when I first read about him moving, trying for basically CSK Sofia, uh, it was very interesting from the sense that I wouldn't have imagined that at that point in his career he would be pursuing an opportunity abroad. I always expected that it would have probably happened earlier. You were pretty much like this is a central part to that entire process. Also, could you tell us a little bit more about how did that come about and the story behind it?
The story is very simple. I have to start with the ISL draft. Um, I was with Mumbai City, and I didn't pick Renedy. I picked number 13. So I have to always say that my team, I think we didn't sleep for 7 days. We were like zombies. And I actually got my first five picks, which actually still today would surprise me that I was actually able to get those five players, because I would have thought at least three players would have been picked up in the first two rounds by others. But again, okay, different thought. Pick number 13, Renly still in the mix. Again, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm not supposed to spend so much. The other player that I was thinking about was Ram Malik. I then go for Ram Malik because I thought, okay, Renly and I are two good friends. This might be perceived wrongly, whatever, which afterwards I thought was a mistake. Right? I always say that I could have gotten Renedy from the domestic draft, and my first pick in the national draft should have been Ian Hume. I think if I had picked again, and different reasons why it's a different story. The Blasters came to Mumbai, and we sat down in a Starbucks. Don't ask me where. We sat down in Starbucks and chatted this and that. And he said, "You know what? I'm getting old. I'm on the verge of retiring, but I would love to um, at least trial abroad once. I said, okay. I spoke to a few friends, our common friend Nuno, and I remember someone Portuguese was the manager of CSKA Sofia, and they said, "Hey, would you be willing?" And CSKA Sofia, of course, just before that had the younger brothers of Lakshmi Mittal
Hmm.
as owners of CSKA Sofia. So end of Feb 2015, Renedy gets his visa, this and that, everything, and they say, "Hey, are you coming over?" Randy says, "Yeah, okay, yeah, let me at least extended weekend. Why not? I'll come over." So I'm training. It was good to see because he could hold his ground, right? Even at his age in his 30s, he was able to hold his ground because, yeah, quality player. And could have stayed on, did stay for couple of weeks. But again, the club was in turmoil because the Mittal brothers had pulled out. There were problems in the clubs, this and that, everything. Had a huge problem with racism also
Hmm.
because, around the club, neo-Nazis and other things. But at least he got a chance, which was always the thing that that he wanted to do. And as a friend, or not only I, but Nuno also as a good friend, all we were able to enable him. And yeah. And I think that if he had gone at a young age, I think he could have made it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very interesting sort of insight into that story. You mentioned like the ISL, and that's perfectly the perfect setup for the next part of the conversation. We also have a question from Ashish, basically
Yeah.
asking you specifically about that. How did Mumbai City FC happen? But I want to just start the story a little bit earlier. It was a few years after Reliance and FSDL had acquired, like the rights to Indian football, before the ISL actually went on floor. What was that period like, in the Indian football ecosystem? Because I'm assuming there was a lot of expectation, a lot of hope that there's going to be a change, that things are going to sort of things are supposed to take off from here. This is a new platform where Indian football can elevate itself, and of course, like with you being a part of Mumbai City FC as the COO, unlike like some people who misconstrue your role in the club. But it was very fascinating to see from a research point of view that you went from a media background to somebody who worked in logistics and sponsorships to a pure operations role. Could you tell us basically the mood before the ISL in the ecosystem, and then your time with Mumbai City, and your memories from that time?
See, I mentioned earlier on, we in 2005 when Z came on board, it looked like things are moving in the right direction. There was a corporate partner who was ensuring broadcast on Z Sports,
Mm-hmm.
good quality. You had people like Manti Langa
Mm-hmm.
coming on board, doing presenting. John Helms as a commentator. You got quality into Indian football. But by 2008, 2009, Z was facing the brunt because of the whole ISL fiasco.
Mm-hmm.
ICL fiasco, sorry,
ICL.
ICL fiasco. Yeah, Indian Cricket League. Because the IPL came around and that literally killed the ICL. Z was losing a lot of money and they were cutting down on their commitments to football. So Mr. Patel used his contacts to convince Mukesh Ambani, to convince Mukesh Bhai. I said, you buy out the rights of Z and you
Mm-hmm.
commit to us for a limited period.
Mm-hmm.
We commit to you. Either you are able to transform the I League into an professional league setup. Because one has to go back in history and say in 1996, the NFL started as a
Mm-hmm.
semi professional league.
Mm-hmm.
On paper, even though everyone was paid professionally, but it was still from a setup standpoint, it was semi pro as per FIFA's definition. And 2007, the I League became in the professional league. So the NFL turned into a professional league, even though, again, was it not? Again, that can be debated. And so Reliance in 2011, 2012 wanted to try and see if they can turn the I League into an ISL
Mm-hmm.
without changing the name. And especially the big clubs in Kolkata and Goa rejected that, did not want to get corporates involved. They
Mm-hmm.
rejected it, right? And this is part of a history which I think a lot of people do not know, who
Mm-hmm.
actually factually always support the I League. without knowing that the ISL would have never been created if the I League clubs had committed to certain things and said, listen, there are corporates. There were corporates like Godrej were being discussed to come on board in Indian football, right?
Mhm.
Want it. Right? This is an information that a lot of these clubs don't want to go out and say, hey, no, no, we didn't do it. And they will say that, no, you did, guys, right? I did some work in 2012 and 2013 for Reliance in regard to the idea of how I would like an Indian professional league to look at. Of course, to
Mhm.
look like in the sense of course, yeah, it would be something of a combo of a Premier League, a Bundesliga, and a Liga. That
Mhm.
is a thing. But I know from their standpoint, because IMG Reliance was involved, IMG Reliance, IMG created the Indian Premier League. IMG is the oldest sports marketing company in the world. Mark McCormick created it in the 70s. So they know, especially the American market. They've got that IMG Academy in Florida and all that stuff. So all of that came into being in the ISL. And at some stage, I was asked by a couple of people in Reliance. I said, "Hey, would you be willing to get associated with any of the franchisees?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? I mean, I'm open. It would be a stint. Why not? Because
Mhm.
I had done a tour with TSKA Hoffenheim, a Bundesliga team who are flying quite high in the Bundesliga at the moment, to India in 2014, right? On the end of the elections, we were able to bring them in. We played at Mizoram, the
Mhm.
biggest game ever in Mizoram to have been played. We couldn't play in Goa, but did camps with Salgaonkar, this and that, and everything. And in between, I flew to Mumbai to meet Ranbir Kapoor and Bimal Parekh. So I was recommended to them that, hey, listen, this could be someone to bring in. And the original idea was to bring me in as a CEO. They made it a CEO, but yes, I see myself as a CEO, but I also saw myself more like an European style sporting director
Mhm.
because I always said that I wanted to get the football sorted and then sort out the club.
Mhm.
Because when we started in July, we had nothing. We
Mhm.
literally had, it was a blank slate. I had a technical director called Nishan Mehra, a really good guy, really into details. Nishant worked on a lot. We worked on a lot of things, and then put a team together. Brought on people like Watson Fernandez as team manager. We had as team operations head, very good friend of mine, still Shabir Alam and other people. Dr. Sandeep Kurale, who's still there, is still with the club. So there are a lot of people who he brought in, created the structure in and around the team. But again, I actually approached quite a number of big coaches. I will never disclose the name, but I was two, three really insane big names were on the
Mhm.
verge of becoming Mumbai City head coach. We did sign, yes, Freddie Ljungberg and later on Nikas Anelka. I've said the story that I tried and went out to sign David Beckham. I did try and sign a deal with City Football Group and say, hey, listen, why don't you become a partner and give me Frank Lampard and David Villa, who were with them, who were supposed to go to the MLS in early
Yeah.
2015. Sadly, Lampard then played for them and David Villa went to Melbourne. But interestingly, I saw, hey, finally, 5 years later, Mumbai City was taken over by the City Football Group. So I couldn't be that wrong. So that was my sort of thingy, and my approach was different. But again, I'm also very German in certain things. I think also, and sometimes I'm not very easy to work with because I've got my own working ways and styles,
Mhm.
and I demand a lot from people around me. I demand a lot from myself, um, and yeah, and I put the team together with my technical team. I still think that on paper we were the best team in season one, but for different reasons, like as I said, Renedy and Ian Hume, those two players in it, I'm sure shot we would have won it. But again, there are planning it in theory and then the practical outcomes. Good example, Nicholas Anelka was banned for the first match
Mhm.
because of a suspension with West Bromwich Albion. I actually got him cleared by the AFF. We,
Mhm.
we as the AFF and ISL, we were willing to take on the Premier League. We were on the verge of showing the Premier League the middle finger,
Mhm.
right, and letting him play. Didn't happen for different reasons. And that was one of the reasons why we lost the first game 3-0. The day before, Nico was still training with the team, right? So there are a lot of small little things which people cannot know that
Mhm.
happened in 2014. And for me, it was very clear. And that is the German in me. I come to play to win. This is not the Olympics for me. This was I come and I want to win. And I want to prove I know
Mhm.
my things. And for me, finishing outside of the playoffs, again for different reasons, which I'll keep internal.
Mhm.
Um, I for myself said I failed.
Mhm.
I still today feel that I failed with Mumbai City because it was everything there to win. We didn't. And yeah, I signed my own resignation letter. I resigned 2 days before Christmas and went home to Germany because I also realized under these circumstances, um, where certain people are telling me and trying to explain to me football who don't understand football, it
Mhm.
is not a situation that I want to be in.
Mhm. It's really interesting to hear, and I think the vibe that I get is basically no experience is actually a bad experience. You learn from pretty much everything, even the worst ones. You learn the most from them. And from a Mumbai football perspective, I'm somebody who's born and raised in Mumbai. Mahindra United was like my team. I used to play in school tournaments that were sponsored by them. We would play in camps, for the youth teams and all of that. When Mahindra shut down, there was a vacuum, that was created in Mumbai football. There was Mumbai FC, obviously. They used to train on our school ground in Don Bosco, Borivali. But when Mumbai City came around, there was a renewed sense of hope. I think Ashish is from the generation that, sort of really connected with the hope that Mumbai City brought to the city, uh, in general. And it took a while after, City Football Group investment to get successful, and to sort of build a winning culture around the football club in Mumbai. But I think in 2026, Mumbai City FC is very central to the football culture in Mumbai. Now, from where it began to where it is right now, I think you can't separate the two. And everyone who played a part in it from day one to where we are today, I think, like you mentioned, whether it's the team doctor, whether it is the people that you brought in season one.
Grassroots. I mean, till today, Dinesh Nair is head of the grassroots system at
Yeah,
Mumbai City, right? So I know that a lot of the things that we did implement in season one, and it's not only me, but it is Nishant as well and others, Indranil Das Blah, all of us who were there to see, for example, like Kandap, who was head of operations, who's now the CEO of the club, that Mumbai City has kept its sort of DNA and sort of
yeah,
certain standards that we set in season one. Again, Mumbai City was not as successful and it needed a City Football Group to come in to help the club to move to the next level, which
yeah.
I still believe and think that if I'd stayed a little longer, most probably we could have achieved it on our own a little longer. But again, I had my own standards and I was not happy, and I took that decision knowingly. Yeah, but those are realities, and again, I always say, which in India, of course, a lot of people don't like to do or don't do at all, is introspect yourself, be accountable to yourself. A lot of people have been around and they should have been gone for I don't know for the last 10 years out of certain positions, right? So that's the thing, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help if you don't introspect, don't realize, recognize these are the things that you need to do to try and move it in the right direction.
Perfect. And I think that just sort of brings me to my next question, which is that wasn't the only ISL team that you worked closely with on a wide range of responsibilities. I wanted to just ask you a little bit more about your involvement with Roundglass Punjab and just enlighten us a little bit about your part in that story.
Roundless Punjab was something that in 2016 a friend of mine contacted me and said, "Listen, I'm getting involved potentially in a project in Punjab, um, and if there is the need, I would like to bring you in and help us structure the whole thing." So yeah, no problem if you want. And I remember we spoke with the Roundglass Group in April 2017, and then things didn't seem to happen for the next 6 months.
Mhm.
And again, because Sunny Singh has made his money in America,
Mhm.
and this is how America works. Within 2 weeks, things happen, contract happened, this happened, that happened, and suddenly I'm sitting in Chandigarh and we're talking about, hey, how can we build the academy? And yeah, they were sort of small field five-a-side training centers over there now trying to set up a proper academy, and all those things which are needed, and Sunny saying, hey, listen, I want to be one of the best. teams, clubs in Indian football. I want to produce talent. I love the idea. I really love the idea. And I said, TK, Sunny, let's come, you come to Europe. Let's go and visit football teams, football clubs, and understand um, how they do it, what they do, and learn best practices.
Mhm.
So we went on a number of trips to the UK. I also said, hey, listen, let's try bring a technical director in, this and that and everything. Visited Arsenal. We went to QPR. We went to other teams. Went to City, Man City as well. Yeah, and wanted to build something. And then Sunny had the idea. Sunny, for him again, American, wanted things to happen fast, right?
Mhm.
And that is it's fine. To me, it's understandable if you want things to happen fast. That to me is not a problem. But to me was the question then: what do you do? How do you do in the right way?
Mhm.
There is a pathway, and he wanted to fast track that, and that is when he interacted with Ranjit and said, "Okay, I'll take over Minerva, the football team, or the teams rather, than the
Mhm.
infrastructure, because Minerva still retains its own infrastructure. And that gives me a spot in the alley."
Mhm.
And I said, let's play second division. We'll get promoted. We can spend that money differently.
Mhm.
Um, he thought otherwise. And yeah, and I departed. And and then the team went its path. And it's good to see. I'm still supportive of the setup, but a
Mhm.
lot of the things that we wanted to set up in 2018, 2019 are still not there today because of the realities of India.
Mhm.
Right? There is a gentleman who wants to build sporting infrastructure. He wants to build a stadium. He wants to build potentially a sports city, because
Mhm.
Roundglass is not only about football. It is hockey. It is tennis. It could do other sports as well. It does a lot of stuff on the rural belt. But again, in India, to build a sporting entity with its own infrastructure is very, very difficult. So yeah, those are some of the realities in Roundglass.
Fascinating. I think the fact that, like, sort of just the challenges that anyone wanting to enter the ecosystem and sort of create something sustainable, that individuals have to overcome, not just at, like, the grassroots level, but even at a club ownership level, is quite interesting to hear, because there's a business term that, like, that keeps coming up to my mind, that India isn't a business friendly market, it's a service friendly market. Like, if you want to go and try to create something, have a lot more hoops to overcome in India than you would normally. So it's quite interesting to hear, like, that perspective, even from a football development point of view. I want to just basically touch upon the journey with ArunFoot, and like, your YouTube channel, alongside, like, everything else that you've been doing. It's really inspirational. I think from a personal point of view, I was someone who spent the 6 best months of my professional life in Germany, trying to move from a journalism major background into operations and logistics. Uh, and, like, just hearing your work, like, with EW throughout these years, while still continuously putting, like, your work, your opinion, and your conversation out there on the channel. It's something that I tune into almost every day, and I just wanted to understand, what is your motivation. I mean, Indian football, like everyone keeps telling me in the last 2 years, it's a thankless space. Like, you're doing something, don't expect anything in return. And when like, tune into your channel to hear about what's happening, what are the updates, it it seems like, the reason why I resonate is because it seems like you're doing this because you want to do this. There's nothing else that, like, you expect out of this. This is something that you're passionate about and you want to talk about. How is that journey unfolded, like, in terms of setting up the channel, your conversations daily, the people you have connected with through the channel?
So I have to go back to 2010, or actually have to go back to 2008, because sorry, 2007. I was approached by some investors who wanted to invest into IndianFootball.com. So they were looking at sports, um, startup sports news aggregators, and some of the people were looking at India as a market as well. So one of the guys behind this investment is the co-founders of SAP.
Mhm.
So we got got started late 2008. Actually, suddenly everyone, we were a team of about 22 people who were spending their free time to do indianfootball.com.
Mhm.
Nobody was being, everyone's spending money out of their own pocket. We tried to professionalize. We even had a major, actually a couple of major deals for indianfootball.com in place, which would have funded the whole thing for 3 years without we even having to blink. The economic crisis, the stock market crash hit 2008.
Mhm.
The whole thing sort of went totally south. These guys had invested in multiple startups. Even Chris and I shifted to Berlin. So
Mhm.
we left our roles and our jobs and said, listen, let's risk it. Let's try and make indiafootball.com a professional entity. And it didn't work out. And then Chris and I said, let's end this. This was February 2010. Let's end this. It hurts too much. I'd spent by then 12 years of my time on this uh, website, which was like an own baby. Like
Mhm.
I treat my projects also always like an own baby, right? Indianfootball.com was an own baby. Mumbai City was like an own baby. Even Roundglass Punjab was is an own baby. ArunFoot became then a baby because in February, March, no, sorry, March, April, good friend of mine, she was the sort of the media head in the background of NDTV at the time. She said, "Listen, Ronavo, create something with your own brand and all. Use Twitter to get your opinions out." And that is how Arunava about football or Arunava Chaudhuri about football came about, and that is how um, ArunFoot got created. Chris created a logo for it. I started on Blogspot, which was at the time a blogging platform. Did some work in 2010 for television for Times Now, quite a bit actually for Times Now at the time, and kept it on Blogspot for a long period of time. And then for whatever reason, 2016, I shifted to arunfoot.com. And yeah, that was it was overboarding to some extent because I was doing more and more and more and more writing. And I sometimes feel I was ahead of my time when I started indianfootball.com. I sort of missed the bus with audiovisual content. I should have, at the start of the pandemic, most probably should have shifted to the audiovisual platform rather than still writing or putting out things via arunfoot.com. I got to know Akshata Shukla of, at this time, of Sports Khabri. Akshata herself is a character, and Akshata said, no, let's do something together. And Hiren of Curious Harry, Shayan as well of Indian football news, and Rahul, who was part of Sports Khabri, we started talking about it. And then I started doing my own videos.
Mhm.
I got help, of course, from those guys because, again, as I say, I'm still bad in creating graphics or intros or whatever. I can talk. You know, I can discuss. We did it for a extended 6, 7, 8 months, and to get three, four, five people together to have discussions on a regular basis is quite difficult.
Yep.
So then I for myself said, you know what? Let me try and do my lives and try and do informative videos on the sites, which
Mhm.
under the tagline of candid football conversations. And as we speak, I've done
Yeah.
1276 lives or video clips on that, which in a little over 2.5 years is quite a bit. But for me, especially the Indian football discussions which I do is um, first of all, you get a little bit of a feel and the vibe of what people are thinking.
Mhm.
Of course, I know that people who come onto my channel also are most probably a lot in my space of thinking and
Mhm.
not about the misinformation, the fake news that is spread about Indian football,
Mhm.
and a lot of people who want to learn about Indian football as well.
Yep.
So that's fine. It is for me sometimes a little bit of own psychology now not to allow the Indian football madness to get into your head because I'm currently not working on any Indian football project, but I spend at least 3, 4 hours of my day either talking on my lives or on the phone with people talking about Indian football for whatever reasons, right? So Indian football, if I want or not, is part of my life and will stay part of my life for the rest of my life. And so therefore, I try to influence it in such a way that it is positive,
Mhm.
right? It is not that everything is down the drain, which it can feel for people to be. So therefore, that's what I try and do. And I do nowadays, as I've been now doing it for 2.5 years, I do shout at people also sometimes when I feel like, that the questions are stupid or the viewpoints are stupid, with because I realize a lot of people don't know enough to have a viewpoint,
Yep.
right? Because I say the most important thing is knowledge
Mhm.
and practical understanding of how things can be implemented.
Yep.
You can't be someone, sorry, ignorant like the current AFF president, and just say things for the sake of saying things. That is the problem of where we're stuck in Indian football. And therefore, today, yeah, I might sound sometimes cynical or sarcastic or whatever, dark humor. Uh, but again, we've seen a lot of things, and we spoke early on in
Yep.
this of what happened in the early 2000s, where the younger me thought, hey, listen, again, we're in the year 2026. I would have thought by now it would be normal for India to play a World Cup.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep. And I think that's probably one of the biggest points that like all of us on crew sort of resonate with your work. That there is, I mean, if you look for Indian football online, or if you're looking for a conversation to be a part of, there is so much of doom and gloom, and there's so many loud voices talking about what is wrong in Indian football, what should be like done, etc. Which is fair enough. Like everyone has the right to basically make videos about the fact that Cape Verde has less population than Andheri, and and tune into Indian football as and when it makes sense. We wanted to basically address the point that you mentioned, try and share a little bit more information and education about the space and about the people in this space. Uh, and one of the key things that I think Arjun and I decided right at the beginning was that we need to go and talk to people who have been narrating these stories professionally for the longest part of their careers. So it was very important that we are not doing commentary over Indian football and Indian football culture, but it's people like Sharda ma'am who has spent time in Kashmir, who has written about Kashmir, like a Sandeep Menon who's written books on his travels across the Northeast, like an Anirudh Menon who's been following Indian football for such a long time, a Bayern who's commentated on Indian football. That they are the ones who are actually giving voice to the stories that we want to create, want to put out there, and majorly because uh, I want to talk about the next point, which is media narrative. In the current sporting space in India, not just football, who owns the narrative and sort of what the narrative is pushing the mainstream or the wider audience towards becomes a very key part of public opinion, right? A couple of words mispronounced, spark a fire in the entire ecosystem. And on the flip side, an announcement of a major brand like Coca-Cola, showing a little bit of interest and some sort of support for the national team becomes again this big silver lining that everyone holds on to. I think there are two very interesting questions over here that I just want to bring in on this point. Starting with basically Sabyasachi. Sorry, yeah, Sabyasachi Roy. Two questions from him. I'll just go through each of them before you can answer. First is, sir, thank you for your time. What do you think we as fans could do going forward so that situations like these don't arrive again? I think he's referring to basically the current situation which we find ourselves in. And just a follow up on that one is, how can fans contribute more? Like, we are all from different backgrounds. We can chip in with our expertise and do things. What things you'd hope we had in India that are doable autonomously as fans?
Um, these are two very complex scenarios. I think the biggest challenge in all of this is, as you say, with the narrative in these days. Um, the challenge, in my opinion, is that what is the truth? Do the facts count? we see, for example, badminton,
Mhm.
right? That there is criticism from a top Danish player who says, I am fine to, you know, um, to take up a $5,000 fine. I will not travel to India,
Mhm.
right? A female badminton player saying, listen, the standards in and around the venue are not good enough. There are monkeys in the stadium. There is pigeon droppings falling
Mhm.
down during matches, which have luckily not hit the players. This is unacceptable, period. What happens? Then someone from the organization says, no, no, everything is fine, everything is fine. Other people have said that things are good. So if you're not willing to accept that, and this is, again, this is similar to what is happening in football, and nobody's willing to accept that we have problems, we have issues. And I have always raised these. I took it on me. I spent my own money in 2022 when we were on the verge of getting banned by FIFA to go and speak to the COA. A certain Ranjit Bajaj was also in the room, and I explained to them what the situation was. And I explained to them what conversations need to be had with FIFA and with AFC coming.
Mhm.
And I said to them also, the letter is ready. It just needs to be signed regarding the ban.
Mhm.
Dr. Qureshi, a former election commissioner of India, as part of the COA, said to me on my face, we are India, they will never ban us. And for me, that was the end of the conversation because the gentleman doesn't even understand where in the sporting space you stand. They have threatened bans to Brazil, they have threatened bans to Spain. Forget all the others who have been banned. They have
Mhm.
threatened a ban on Spain because of the behavior of the president at the FIFA Women's World Cup. And in Brazil, the Brazilian Supreme Court got involved in matters of the CBF.
Mhm.
Similar as in India. That's the first thing. We have a problem in how who gets involved.
Mhm.
Without right leadership, Indian football will not move forward.
Mhm.
Right. That is a key point in my opinion. That without the right leadership, things cannot be rectified. Also,
Mhm.
there needs to be, I always say, introspection and accountability, which I spoke about today. I know that I've done enough mistakes, uh, and to me, fans need to ask questions,
Mhm.
but they need to ask, in my opinion, the right questions and not just be blind fanboys of stories. Hey, listen, we have done this, we have achieved that, and then you just today. I told you at the start of IndianFootball.com to get information was close to impossible, and we
Yeah.
still got it somehow via emails in those days. Today, you just if you see or hear something on X, on Instagram, or on a YouTube, you can simply Google and figure out if things are true or not.
Mhm.
People as fans, sorry guys, you are too lazy to do your homework. If XYZ tells you, I have this in my lives very often. I have heard, and already my antennas go up if someone says I have heard. That means you don't know what you're talking about,
Mhm.
right? It is, and that's why I always say also be skeptical. The AFF in the sports minister in front of the AFF and the clubs announced a date with the clubs having actually not committed,
Mhm.
which de facto means that the sport minister lied in that press conference.
Mhm.
And this would be also a question. You've mentioned the names of some senior journalists that you have
Mhm.
interviewed for your series. Has any one of them actually asked those questions to the concerned person? They are based in Bangalore. Are you asking Mr. Harris? Have you asked Satyanarayan those questions in Bangalore? Have you
Mhm.
asked it on a national level? What are you doing?
Mhm.
No. So the fan is on one side. To me, and we have had very, very good journalists in Indian sports.
Mhm.
But are they asking the right question? As I said, the same with the fans. Are you actually first of all asking questions? And if you're asking the questions, are you getting the answers? If not, are you following up with another question? That is not happening. And when people like myself come out and say these and these things will happen, and I think 90-95% of things that I've said have sadly happened over the last 3 years, then people tell me on the face, no, no, this will not happen. And the people are not willing to agree to that they were wrong. That's
Mhm.
another big problem I see. That listen, if you're wrong, as I said, if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. And this is perceived to be a weakness in an Indian context. So I think there's a lot of Indian psychology of admitting things
Yep.
because, and I always tell people now, listen, I'm going to turn 50 this year, right? I know I'm old enough. I've done, you know, I've done my stuff.
Hmm.
I'm talking out of knowledge.
Hmm.
And if I don't know something, I will tell you I don't know.
Yep.
But if a lot of people will never say that because it's perceived as no. In Germany, we have learned if you've worked here 6 months, you will know. If you don't know something and you say it, this is perceived as the right thing and as perceived as strength.
Hmm.
So that is something I think that we need to learn in India, and fans can need to ask the right questions and stop blindly following things.
Hmm.
I see a lot of football fans, forget India, but also here in this part of the world, right? That if their club does something,
Yep.
that they blindly follow their clubs. And it is very interesting. I mean, we're doing this live on a Sunday. Yesterday, the Real Madrid fans had a full go at their own players,
Yep.
which someone who I know who's worked at Real Madrid says this is the first time because the players have always gotten away because it was always the fault of the coach,
Yep. Yep.
right? And that is something that fans of big teams or small teams, every fan should ask themselves, that is what your contribution is. Ask those questions, ask questions on X, ask questions on Instagram or whatever other platform it is, if you think and believe it is not right.
I think that that's a very, very important message. I think just for every Indian football fan in the ecosystem, because I completely agree with you on the point that unless there is a sort of unless there is an opposition, like you're not actually held accountable to the promises you make, to the path that you are committing to, and those questions need to be raised from time to time. I think one of the major building blocks of TGIF between Arjun and me was that every episode we need to have like Jeopardy. And what we mean by jeopardy is that we can't be showing that, oh, this is so beautiful, there's such amazing, there's such amazing local culture, etc. But why isn't any of this actually leading up to where we want to be? And we need to, within these stories, create room for people, local stakeholders, to raise questions on themselves, of each other, in a respectful manner that leaves an average Indian football fan uh, more informed, but also start to question ourselves that, okay, when you're watching a Hyderabad episode, you're seeing this amazing heritage, this history, but why is a girl from Nizamabad the only player from Hyderabad for the last 25 years that has played at a senior level? Why is just 4 or 6 games being organized at a state and at a district level in Hyderabad, in Telangana, for the last I think 10 years? These questions need to have a space, and rather a platform to be raised at. And I think what you mentioned is the perfect message for fans, because that's the kind of questions and accountability you should hold your decision makers to. I completely agree with you on that point. And I think they're just to sort of bring in a little bit, a few more
Just
questions. Yeah.
just one point to add to that. And also for everything, the AFF cannot be blamed.
Yep.
The other stakeholders play their part in the success and failure of Indian football. So in my opinion, your biggest problem at the moment is that the AFF is managed badly. So everything is to be blamed on the AFF. No. If you see the clubs and the way where we are, because they were blindly following Reliance for 11 years,
Yep.
Reliance did everything for them. So they didn't have to bother. On the other side, the academies. Where is the talent? The talent issue has not been, it's not an issue for today or tomorrow. It is an issue which has been there for the last 30, 40 years.
Hmm.
But it was cushioned off because you had the Tata Football Academy on one side.
Yep.
Players like a Renedy Singh have come through that. And you have exceptional talent like an I'm Vijayan, a Bhaichung, and a Sunil coming in. Right? Yesterday, someone asked me in my life a question which I found very interesting is, oh, why are we not producing I'm Vijayans, Bhaichungs, and Sunils? Because we've never produced those. I am Vijayan is a God
Yeah.
gifted talent. Bhaichung and Sunil worked very, very hard to get to the level. So we did not produce them. They
Yeah.
created themselves, as many other Indian athletes in different sports.
Yeah.
That needs to be understood. Our grassroots and our youth sport ecosystem in India is not good enough. And we're talking about hosting an Olympics in 10 years, right? India's priorities should be to become a better sporting nation
Yeah.
and then think about becoming a host of the Olympics. That would be my suggestion if someone would ask.
I just would like to add to one like point I just heard a couple of days back. Sid Annie and Arjun Pandit were having a chat on 420 grams. I think Sid Annie raised a point which stayed with me for a while. He said that it's not just football. Like you gave the example of I am Vijay, Bhaichung, and Sunil. Um, you look at Indian sports outside of cricket, uh, there are talents or other trailblazers emerging not because of the system, they emerge in spite of the system. Whether that is badminton, whether that is javelin with Neeraj, or whether that is any Olympic sport for that matter.
Take tennis as an example, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I started IndianFootball.com in 1998 because tennis was in its prime in those days. You had Leander and Mahesh as the best doubles pairing in the world. Sania Mirza came around the corner. Early 2000s, Indian tennis was boom, bang. It was great, and that is an example. But the success has dried up after these
hmm,
all of these athletes have retired, right? Because they were successful for their own hard work.
yeah. I think a couple of questions just to sort of round off the chat, and it sort of brings it back to just a good note to end it on. This is from Sarah. As someone who's finding it difficult to hold on to hope with everything going on in Indian football, what's the one thing today that gives you hope?
Um, I still have fire to fight on, you know, on a personal thing. I had this. I've said this a few times in my lives. I had this a few weeks ago when I was doing a live watch along Bangladesh versus India. I was in London. Um, And between meetings, I went back to my hotel to do the live. After 50, 55 minutes, for the first time ever, I was actually thinking, why am I doing this? I could have actually gone. I told a very good friend of mine, Zoeb, Desi Baller. I said, listen, we could have had a coffee in the afternoon, right? We wouldn't have to meet at 10 in the evening, right? And spend a nice afternoon and chatting about South Asian football and what is happening. And that is the danger I see. I've had these moments, yes. Again, when IndianFootball.com shut down, I said, listen, Indian football is done for me. Let me do some stuff with other football, which I've done. Right. I've not only worked, actually, my main work has been outside of Indian football. But again, when it comes to Indian football, we speak about Indian football. But if you I always say, if you are a real Indian football fan, you will always come back to support Indian football.
Yeah,
You might switch off. You might turn on. But if you are a real Indian football fan, you will always come back. And not an Indian football fan, you will be, especially what I always say is in the times of failure, you need to support even more. And
yeah.
you need to ask what we just spoke about at length. You need to ask questions. That I think is very, very important. So never, never, ever lose hope. If you've lost hope, very difficult to turn around.
This question is from my partner, who also gave us the name Sportfolio. So she basically asked, TGI beautifully captures just how much fans care about Indian football, and I love that about the series. Do you have any memorable fan stories or interactions that have stayed with you, like throughout your career? Just on,
I always say, for example, getting to know my former colleague Chris Ponocatu Daniel, right? He was a fan. He wanted to buy an Indian jersey and he wasn't aware where to get it and send an email to IndianFootball.com. That's how for now 27 plus years we have been friends. I would not know the guy, you know. So if you ask me, that is one. Talking to people about Indian football. I have friends who I know because of Indian football. That to me. I remember when we went with Hoffenheim to Mizoram. even the chief minister became a friend of mine, right? He became a fan of mine. Said, Ramo, you have done something for our state. You are now a state guest, right? And it was insane that in Mizoram, most people who had little knowledge about football knew Arunava's enabled us because we'd done some projects earlier with the German FA. We brought the German students national team after that. Um, yeah. So the even if it's not many, but the few people who've been thankful for what I've tried to do over the years for Indian football, and that is a nice thing to see, right? Again, people criticizing you, not knowing what you do, and all that stuff. That's part of it. But that is, I always say, that speaks about those people who think they know and understand.
Mhm.
And again, in German, there's a saying: if you want to have an argument, you have to wake up earlier and do your homework. And that is my advice to those people who want to argue football with me, because I think there are 4 or 5 people around the world who can discuss Indian football with me and have an argument with me, because those people potentially know more than me. And those, as I said, those I can count them on one hand. I'll be that. People might say that's arrogant, but I say that, yeah, I can say that confidently.
That German phrase was something that I was like, I was told by my manager, I think in my first week at in Germany in head. So yeah, that's a very German thing. Like, if you really want to prove your point, do your homework before you get to the get to the meeting. But yeah, I think just you mentioned Mizoram, and I think that brings me to my final question. Um, I'm hoping that you've had a chance to watch, like, the series like that we created across the 5 episodes. I mean, Mizoram is one place that we will be visiting next year. Like I've said before, we've been very grateful for the seed funding we got from Mizo University, which helped us produce season 1. And our commitment to them was that we will visit your state and make an episode in season 2. Um, from, like, just a neutral perspective, apart from the fact that we would love to collaborate with you when we make season 2 on a much more deeper level and film
Sure.
with what was one thing or rather one piece of advice or feedback you would have for us, for Arjun, myself, like, from like a media professional's point of view, with obviously all the extensive experience that you've had covering football at an international and like, the Indian football level, in terms of representing Indian football in a long form, like, product like the way we have.
I've told you this personally. I've said this also when you guys came onto my platform, ArunFoot, for an interview, the Sikkim episode. Because again, with Bhaichung, there's a lot of stories, you would say, but a lot of things that I know. I happened to be there or I was involved in it. But I love the most that the story of those mothers, right? And those are the by chance stories, which I think in Mizoram you will find. Maybe not in Aizawl, but maybe if you go to, where Lungle, where Lalindika Ralte comes from, where you are close to the Myanmar border and stuff. I think there are a lot of stories. The passion of football, which is visible in all episodes, right? It doesn't matter if you're, again, showing those Sikkimese mums, you're talking to Ishfaq, Shabir Ali. Again, I don't need to agree to everything that a Shabir Ali says, or Bhaskar Ganguly, to some things that these old guys are saying, where I would say, guys, the world has moved on. But they have been part of, or are part of, Indian football history. Um, on one side, there's the story of the legacy, but also questioning to some extent that the so-called legacy part in it.
Mhm.
I did that yesterday in my show where I questioned and said, listen, certain things in our history most probably are a problem when we want to move forward. We're in the year 2026 and we're still talking about the 1950s and 60s. We're talking about 1911, Mohun Bagan beating East Yorkshire Regiment, which is massive to win the IFA Shield. But the question that I ask, is it more important for India's independence struggle or is it more important for Indian football?
Yeah.
You did not beat a football team, you beat army men at the end of the day, and you were a football team. So that puts it for me into perspective. And I know a lot of Mohun Bagan fans will hate me for that, but that's the reality, right? Especially Kolkata, the Maidan culture needs to come to the year 2026. I love to go to the Maidans. I've said this multiple times. Hey, I'll
Mhm.
go to the George Telegraph tent. I'll have a lebu chai. I'll have the fish fry. Brilliant. But the conversations are about football past. We are not talking about the future, right? We're having chats. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge that you have. to find those niche stories, the real stories, the stories of, if you say Mizoram, what all did a Tete have to go through to help Mizoram to get there. It is not only Tete himself, but look at where Tete has come from, being someone, trying to build Mizoram football, and then in the long run now being a minister at government level, a senior member of the AFF as well. Brilliant stories, and you've tons of stories across India. I said, if you have to go to again, I know, I'm sure you've been inundated by messages from people from Kerala said, you have to come to Kerala, you have to come to, and Kerala is worth not one story. Kerala has so many stories that you have to do. So the question is, of course, the Traveler's Guide to Indian Football. I think you'll have to do, in certain states, you'll have to do an episode B or C. I don't know how you're going to do it, or a second episode or a third episode at some stage, because there are so many stories to be told. And
And
and again, going to, let's say, a Jharkhand, right? You have certain things that you will be linked to the Tata Football Academy, which is worth
yep,
in it. But also, let's say, girls football in Ranchi, where I
yep,
remember Franz Gassler. I don't even know if the program still exists, but Franz came and did stuff, and tribal girls. So there are a lot of stories to be told, and it's a brilliant series. I've loved it. Again, I've said, maybe I watched it first, that's why I loved it the most, but I still love the Sikkim episode the most. I've said this also, but yeah, it's just brilliant to see, and it is for people to also get to know that there is football in India. And I hope that you also can take this to an international audience
yep.
and showcase it as well to international audiences. Say, guys, you know what? We play football in India. That should be the story.
Yep, yep. I think that is a brilliant note to sort of just end this conversation on. Before signing off, I would just like to extend an invitation to you. We want to do a lot more things differently in season two, and you mentioned Mizoram and Kerala and these other states. I think what we would love to do next season, and what we are trying to hopefully achieve realistically, is to visit these places and capture or rather take in these experiences with like someone, not just us as a crew, but also like sort of have that experience through two lenses rather than one, and be a part of like these experiences that we're trying to capture. So I will be in touch with you, to hopefully plan a trip where you can also join us as we go and explore these stories and sort of give your insight along the way. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I know it's been a long chat. It's a Sunday, but thank you so much for taking your time out and sharing the entire journey that you've had professionally in football. It was really insightful. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone who watches this video will. Thank you so much, sir.
Johnson, thank you for having me. And yeah, once again, you have started something great. Now you have to build on it. And, you set a benchmark. You guys have set a benchmark, not only yourself, but all of you who have been involved have set a benchmark for yourself. Expectations season two will be higher.
Lovely, lovely, sir. Just for everyone, I have added basically Arun sir's social channels in the description. You will see like the ticker below for the last part of the chat. Please do drop a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel for more. Check out Arun sir's channels on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, X, which is basically where I have followed Indian football updates for a very long time. From your handle. Yeah, please do support everybody in this space. I think it is important, like Sir said, to keep the conversation alive, and we can only do that when there is more and more audience coming and participating in it. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you until next time.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.